Good evening, everyone. Sunday, October 11th. Time for episode 20 of The Drums of Doom. Part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me. Starting a little before page 245. Vlad and Ariana are engaging a party of Silent Scream's evil dwarves. "Go back to your fortress, would-be king," said Silent Scream. "You will meet your end here." Each side watched the other. The air was still, as quiet as death. Vlad muttered a word, and a wall of energy surrounded him. The Darg loosed their bolts and poison darts, each one a volley of death, but each shaft was vaporized by Dark Elfar magic. Suddenly, the walls began to move, dark, ghostly things spilling from every corner. Children of Shadow, Vlad's minions. They attacked. The Darg shrieked, drawing black swords and thrusting adamant spears. Black magic banished his minions and burned away his shield wall. They rushed him, but he was no longer there. Stepping out of shadows behind them, his enchanted wand, Sharakul Lolth, erupted, its flames filling the tunnel, enveloping everything within it. Ariana crouched inside of her protective shell, feeling its heat even there. The magical fire was as hot as dragon's breath, the very stone of the walls melting beneath its onslaught. Several of the Darg were caught by surprise, and those that had no time to raise their evil magic in order to ward off the flames. Their flesh withered, cooking off their bones, their dying screams merely gasps. When the fire ceased, their adamant armor was all that remained of them. The tunnel reeked of burning flesh. For a moment, all things were uncertain, because the smoke blinded them all. The Dark Dwarves had survived for ages, through treachery and cunning, and although the fire destroyed the lesser warriors, the greater among them had quickly spoken words of warding, or activated the baneful sorcery woven into their armor. To them, Vlad's fire was little more than an inconvenience, and they slogged through the molten rock of the road, as if the lava was merely the mud of some dismal quagmire, or the sands of some distant shore. On and on they came, Darg, once 21, now 15, their faces set with jagged grimace and ill intent. It was then that their sorcerers revealed themselves, and they battered Vlad with all manner of hate-filled spells and vile curses. He nearly faltered beneath their counter-attack, but Ariana's spells held against them all. He was no longer as he once had been. He was now half demon lord, half dark Elfar, and he was the ruler of shadow, the underworld between darkness and light. His body was nearly invulnerable, his flesh and bones as resilient as a demon prince's bones. He had his father's intellect and his family spirit, as irresistible as a mountain. In this battle versus these foes, he fought like his father would have, like a dark Elfar lord. Spells and enchantments of war filled his mind, and when he again lashed out, lightning bolts crackled, fire exploded, and the very earth split. In the tumult, many of the Darg were sucked into the gaping maw of the earth, and when the smoke again cleared, the Darg ranks were reduced to 10, but those remaining were far from finished. His mind calculated every change, flowing with the direction of combat. Raising magical wards to protect himself, his enemies beat at his protective shields with weapons starving for his flesh. And parched for his blood. He was powerful, but even his strength had its limits, and Vlad's spells were being consumed one by one as he defended himself. They circled him now, and it seemed to them that he was weakening. It appeared to them that he was about to fall, and their wicked smiles were terrible to behold. When they returned to Agoric with his head, they would be the heroes of Grulthank, and all manner of foul pleasures would be theirs. Silent Scream was gleeful, for with this victory, the blood debt to House Lucheron would finally come to an end. Better still, the line of Acklon would die without an heir. If Vlad had been merely a Dark Elfar lord, then perhaps he would have fallen. But he was his father's son, trained since childhood to use all the potential of his mind. Knowing the hearts of his foes, he knew that their warlocks often held their most devastating spells in reserve for use when their prey was at its weakest, and so he feigned his own helplessness, allowing fear to show upon his face. Above him, in her hiding place, Ariana trembled, for she had never seen such a display of power. Vlad's act was so perfect that even she was fooled, but she remembered his words and waited. She had to trust him, but her own worries would soon outgrow her patience. The warlocks unleashed their fury. Where Vlad stood, the very air boiled, the ground shattered, and spirit itself melted, and lo, they saw him sink before them, his face twisted in silent agony, his body and armor melted, ruined and ended. He was utterly consumed. When the smoke cleared, 10 dogs stood staring at the pile of ashes, and they all laughed the hearty laugh of thieves who were relieved to have escaped a horrible twist of fate. "No more will House Lucheron threaten the dogs," Silent Scream said. "No more will the son of Acklon wield his debt of blood." Black Bible chuckled nervously, and Fell Sorcerer breathed a sigh of relief. Ariana was beyond reason, her lover murdered, and utterly beyond resurrection. She began to chant the first of her killing spells, raising the power of the goddess. 10 pairs of black eyes lanced their malice upon her. It was then that Vlad stepped forth from the shadows. His enemies' hearts were filled with fear, for their sorcerers had no more spells of war, and their armor of adamant was singed, pitted, its magic exhausted. So easily you seal the fate of a Dark Elfar lord. "Our curses are gone, our spells depleted," Fell Sorcerer said, "but our blades still hunger for the blood of Acklon." Vlad battled them then in the manner of his father. He was now, indeed, a Dark Elfar lord, like his ancestors before him, and his was a spirit and lineage of honor. No longer would he engage these enemies like a wizard, but rather like a warrior. This time he unsheathed Shimpa Gruel, which meant trusted friend, his father's own sword, to his father's enemies. It was known only as the Decapitator, and for the rest, he would use his hands and feet like a dragon. His body moved like boiling liquid, never still, always on the move, at times like a viper or a hawk or a tearing tiger. One by one, the dark warriors fell, until only Vlad, Silent Scream, Fell Sorcerer, and Black Bible remained. Blood dripped from him in at least a dozen places, and their poisons sought his heart, but neither of his hearts were that of just a man, no more. Now he possessed a demon's still-beating heart, and his elfin heart had grown as well. Their dreadful poisons would have slain 100 warriors, but to him it was like fuel to the fire, and his body healed itself before their very eyes. Their eyes, which had so recently been filled with the sparkle of victory, were now only mirrors reflecting their own deaths. "Surrender your plunder to me," Vlad said, "and I'll let you live." Silent Scream looked to his fellows, and they were all of like mind. "You lie," he said. "You will kill us anyway." "As you wish," Vlad answered. Fell Sorcerer produced the Duaredheim's gem, trying to summon power from it, but the flawless crystal refused to awaken, and Shimpa Gruel took his head. His second blow removed Silent Scream's sword hand at the wrist, and Atran Daru fell clattering to the floor. "A hand for a hand, vile paladin," Vlad said. Black Bible uttered his last curse, but it held no power. Slashing at Vlad, he turned to run, but a column of fire like the hand of God. Like the hand of God smote him, and he soon fell smoldering and dead. Silent Scream used the distraction to meld with stone and escape. It was one of their most unique powers, and one that the Darg could use after only brief concentration. Somehow, they could manipulate the structure of their bodies in such a way that stone was as pliable as water to them. They could float, walk, and even swim through it, and in some way sense how to get from here to there in it. Vlad considered traveling through shadow to get him, but it didn't matter. Silent Scream's treachery would get the best of him in the end. Ariana stood on the edge of the overhang, looking down at the carnage. "Don't do that to me again." "I had to make it look real. Now I know why I hate illusionists. Are you coming up here, or do I have to come down there and melt off my feet?" "One moment," he said, taking up Etran Daru. "You are no druid." "You will serve me for a time," Vlad said, "and then I will return you to the young acolyte." "Yes, master." "Please, a rain to cool the stone." Clouds formed, and soon the rain fell, filling the tunnel with blinding steam. But in time, the stone hardened, encasing some of the bodies, entombing them for eternity. Ariana then leaped down to his side. "Well done, Commander." Regretfully, many of the stolen items have now been lost. But we have the most important ones, the gem, the gnome's blades, and the diamond from the divining scepter. "And Etran Daru," Vlad said, "but we must hurry. We must recover the dwarf's weapons and the ranger's sword of flame before Silent Scream returns to alert Agoric." "After you," Ariana said, holding out her hand. The Master Smith. Bellows roared, and the thunder of his hammer shook the foundation of the world. Standing before his gigantic anvil, he was huge beyond imagining, as limitless as the heavens themselves. Kerr knew that he stood watching the Creator. 3 strange beings stood around him, appearing as dwarves, yet somehow unfinished. He looked more closely. They seemed to be molded from clay. "Grisnost, Dumalone, Arthorm," the god said, "bring me iron and mithril and stone." Taking each of the elements from his assistants, he then placed them in his giant crucible and melted them into one upon his forge fire. His work seemed attentive and methodical, as if he was an artist creating a masterpiece. Suddenly, his anvil spouted great gouts of steam, and Kerr could see Moradeus no more. The hissing sound continued, and he knew then that he was awakening from some kind of dream. Lying on cool stone, he first noticed that his right arm was completely asleep, tucked as it was behind his back. Rolling over required real effort, and he groaned against the pain of countless cuts and bruises. It was hot, dreadfully so, like reaching into an oven. He was covered in sweat, sickly yellow-green colored, and he could smell the taint of the Darg's poison in it. "Bastards," he muttered. Removing his armor and clothing, he tried to wipe as much of the vileness off himself as he could. Soon after, he was racked with a coughing fit that seemed to clear still more of it. His head spun, but things were clearing, coming into focus. He was the first of his companions to awaken. Lying on the ground all around him, they were strewn about on crudely carved stairs, bisecting the top of a slender finger of rock. Reaching for his wineskin, he noticed that it was somehow full. He uncorked it. It seemed to be filled with clean water. Probably a Darg trick, he thought, laced with poison. Overcome with thirst, he risked placing some in his mouth and spitting it out. When nothing happened, he tried a little sip and waited. Still alive after some time, he chanced a long drink, saving the last of it for reviving his friends. Some of them awoke with a splash. Others needed a slap or two from his calloused hands. It was a miracle. All of them were alive, and besides, a few sore spots, completely healed. "Whoa," Dow said. My head is spinning. That's the poison, Kerr said. The more that you move around, the quicker that your body will shake it. Kalor groaned. How is it that we're still here? Everyone was dying. I don't know, Kalor, Kerr said. They had us cold. And if not the gnomes, Leander said, then surely the ant-men could have had their way with us. Perhaps we have overstepped ourselves with this quest, Dow said. Every step of the way is wrought with peril. But now we know, Tarek said, that we are on the course of something immensely important. If it wasn't, then we would all surely be dead. We should leave this place, Karina said. It reeks of evil, and I can feel their filth on my skin. Their voices will haunt my dreams forever. Let us run. I want to run away with all of my heart. Easy, Lady Greylinks, Tarek said. We have no way of knowing if the greatest terror lies behind us or in front. Let's rest for a short time at least, Carmen said. We need to clear our heads and think about what has happened. And Kayla and I should study, Dow said. A few spells could go a long way towards keeping us alive down here. That is, if we have anything left to contemplate from. It is amazing, Kalor said, but Modrul's book was left behind as well. All of the remaining formula are still intact. Most likely the bastards can't read, Kerr said. Leander, how is your hand? What about it? And why are you walking around in your loincloth? The dog cut it off to steal away your sword. And to answer your second question, I am covered in dog poison. Would you mind using the flat of your knife to scrape it off of my back? Not at all, but I am a little worried about being poisoned again. I'm fairly sure that it only works if it penetrates the skin. I'm feeling a bit uncertain about your uncertainty, Leander said. But here goes. Now that you mention it, my hand is a little sore, and my scar is gone. Your scar? A dog bit me when I was 5. Nearly tore my hand off. If anything, my hand is even better than it used to be. My Corellius, what the hell is going on? Asked Dow. It seems like we have a guardian angel. Maybe we're already dead, Karina said. And this is the stairway to hell. Not dead, Tarek said. Spared. But why? And by whom? Too bad they didn't spare Kalor's neck. Someone tried to pry off his necklace. If they had pulled any harder, Kalor said, they would have pulled my head clean off. My neck is so swollen I can barely breathe. My sword is gone, Leander said while checking his belongings, and all of the gems that I took from Modrul's lair. Mine too, Dartin said. Everything valuable is gone, Carmen said. Kalor, do you still have the gem? I do. It's still in my pack as it always was, and the scepter's gem as well, but no scepter. See if it still works. Arcanus, Verbera Locus, and then its magical rainbow of light burst out. Its insistent pull nearly tearing the gem from his hand. Now I know what the scepter was for. So the magic was in the diamond alone, Dartin said. As long as we have it, Kalor said, we still have a chance to stop them. It's strange, Karina said, but I don't feel sick anymore. Nor I, nor anyone, I think, Carmen said. Someone has helped us beyond measure this day. But why? Dow asked. Surely the dog would have finished the job, Kerr said. I can't believe that they left us alive. Someone must have been holding something over them, Tarek said. Something big. Probably the same ones who helped us. They could have taken it all, Dow said. The gems, our weapons, everything, and let us die. What possible reason could they have for wanting us alive? There's only one way to find out, Karina said while stretching. Rangers and dwarves in the front, little thieves in the rear. Whoever it was that stole Leander's sword, Tarek said, returned the rest of our weapons to us, even my sword of flame that has no name. That's it, said Karina. That's what? Flame, she said. The name of the sword that had no name. Flame, Tarek said, brandishing it, and by magic, Flames caressed its length, and they all agreed that it was indeed a good name. Well, said Dow, I don't like the look of things hereabouts. I'm thinking that a swift departure is in order. Get your studying done, Carmen said. The rest of us will check the gear and pack what we have left. Then we're getting the hell out of here. They all laughed with her at that, and for a moment the darkness seemed to fade. Well, Keg, are you going to come along like that? It is more comfortable in the heat, but not so good against the sword, Tarek said. Clothes and armor would be good. Very well, Kerr said, grumbling, but that dog captain better hope that we never meet again. Behind them loomed the dog's impenetrable door, forged of the black alloy adamant. Some 20 feet in height, it stood barred from within, standing like the hideous claw of a devil, shielding Grulthag from the outside world. There is another possibility, Tarek said, that they haven't let us go at all. Of course, Leanna said. We can neither travel north, east, or west, and without wings we can't go up or down. Only south remains. Then let's hurry along to the next trap then, Kalo said. I've already gone far too long without being hurled into a wall. That hissing, D'Artagnan said. What is it? Water, striking the lava, Kerr said. The blood of the earth to the dwarves. To fall into it means incineration, but some believe that it is possible to ask the element of fire for help and wade through it without burning. Just how hot is it? Hot enough to melt your bones in seconds and your sword in 2 more. Then how could someone wade through it, Dow asked. The dwarves know that each element has a spirit, Kerr said, a force that can be communicated with. In certain conditions of extreme fear or stress, a dwarf or any being can ask the elements to accept them. You told us before, Tarek said, that the dwarves were forged with fire. Maybe that's why the lava will accept you. Accept you, Dow said. Once accepted, you become one with the fire, and it won't burn you. What if you're not accepted? Karina asked. Then you burn. Perhaps we can skip the lava, D'Artagnan said painfully. This winding stair seems perfectly sound. I just can't imagine why they let us go, Karina said. I think that our meeting was no accident, Tarek said. It was a setup. Then someone hired them to capture us, Carmen said. But who? Dow said. And why? I think that we're soon to find out, Kalor said, holding the magical diamond aloft once more. Arcanus, Verbera, Locus, coming to life in a rainbow of light, shining like a lighthouse beacon. It pulled his arm southward until he pointed straight down the length of the slender stair. What say thee, Kerr? Carmen said. Do you think that they have let us go, or left us to die in some foul trap? They never let anyone go, Kerr said. Someone must have made them let us go, or else we would still be their captives, trapped like Tarek said. Who are they? Karina asked. The Darg. The Darg? Black-hearted dwarves who thrive on lies and deceit, Kerr said in disgust. They are no kin to other dwarves, nor were they created by Moradeus. It's hard to believe that such an evil could survive without consuming itself, D'Artagnan said. There are many old tales of evil dwarves trading powerful magic for souls. Yes, Leander said. I remember the story of Brodir, chief of the Sea Wolves. He sold his soul for chainmail that no blade could bite, and the gift of future sight. And it was Brodir who slew the good King Brian, and he who slew Brodir upon the marshy plain of Clontarf in the year 1014. And his sons then drove the rest of the rogues into the sea. But most of them died as well, D'Artagnan said. It is a sad tale, but some of King Brian's descendants lived on. Let's save the history lesson for later, Tarek said. Inventory the gear and get packed. We'll stow Kalors and Dows for them. Get everything ready, Carmen said, and then get some rest. As soon as the wizards are ready, we are moving out. Much of their gear had been stolen, and so their burden was light. The bountiful treasures that they had taken from Modrul's lair were largely gone, including all their potions. Kalor's magic scrolls, and all of their coins and gems. Most of their armor and arms had been spared. Their rucksacks, although pilfered, still held some useful sundries, and although their food was gone, their water skins had been filled. Their minds were filled with many questions and few answers, but they were now a party of action, working together as one. Their strength returned anew. The would-be wizards had learned what they could in those few precious hours, but their position, so precarious, so near to the heart of evil, begged, nay, insisted upon flight. Fly away, heroes, run. Run until ragged breath, ruined heart, and useless limbs. Run until pathways end, wall of rock or endless rift. Flee until witless end. It was to their credit that they resisted fear's call, for who among them could know what new dangers lurked ahead in the world of eternal dark? Their first few steps down that long, finger-like path of rock were the most harrowing, because the last effects of the dog's poison still lingered, dizzying, nauseous, and painful. A sea of lava churned far below them, and such was its heat that the very walls of the chasm appeared to their heat-sensitive eyes to be bathed in blood. Looking over the edge was like looking into an abyss, an endless fall into a river of fire. Despite their handicaps, they were whole and well for the first time in days. With each passing step, the dark, sinister presence began to fade from their memories, but would haunt their dreams for years to come. The quest had nearly taken all of their lives, and yet they still lived. Perhaps they did have some guardian angel. Hope had been rekindled. Okay, that's where we're going to end episode 20. Episode 21 will begin with a chapter entitled Grillthank on page 256. Have a great Columbus Day and have a good night. Thank you for listening. And remember, as always, read the Drums of Doom, Part 2 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga by me and all of the following novels. Last Admiral, Kerr's Rage, and The Ice Moon. Thank you and have a great night.